Rob, in Marysville, Ohio, there is a huge Honda plant, and it's been there for decades now, and they crank out Honda Accords and all kind of Honda vehicles. My brother-in-law works there, and he tells me that there are quite a few Japanese white-collar types have moved to Marysville, Ohio, and the surrounding area, and they brought their families with them, their children too, and they've settled there, and then that's where they work as engineers and design artists and all that goes into car making. And what he tells me is that the state of education in America is so poor that these Japanese families have banded together and they've created what's called a Japan school, where when the week of instruction concludes in the American public schools in the Columbus area, the Japanese kids go to school on Saturday, taught by Japanese instructors, and they get their additional learning that they feel is necessary to advance themselves for their futures. The state of, if that doesn't speak to the state of education in this country, let me give you this stat. And this comes from the Organization for Corporate and Economic Development, which tracked the average length of a school day in the world. In the United States, it's 6.8 hours. In China, it's 9.5 hours. Now, I give you that little anecdote in these stats to point out that our West Virginia legislature struggles every year with dealing with our educational woes. And that's happening again this year. Senator Amy Grady, who's the chair of the Senate Education Committee, and you can thank her for now having Bibles in our classrooms, she proposed here this week to change the school calendar in West Virginia from a 180-day requirement to a requirement of 900 hours annually of instruction in the West Virginia schools. Now, 38 states in this country have a daily requirement, 180 days. There's about 12 states that count the required instruction time in hours. 900 hours would be the lowest amount that any state requires in the country. Senate Bill 890 is the brainchild of Amy Grady, and she said that she wants to consider this proposal because, in her words, quantity does not equal quality in education. I would disagree. She's advancing this legislation because she feels that it would give the schools more flexibility in terms of how they set up their school calendar. In fact, the rationale is gaining steam in the legislature. Senator Craig Hart of Mingo County said that, hey, if we give the schools flexibility, it's possible that the school calendar could be changed to such an extent that we might be able to get Fridays off or only go half days on Friday. And he said, if we can't pay teachers more, maybe we can rearrange their week and give them some more days. And Senator Oliverio said that it's possible that we could have a 4-day school week in West Virginia. Now, I've often said on this show as a parent, Rob, that I'm a consumer of both public and private education in the Eastern Panhandle. My kids attended both kinds of schools. My perspective on this issue is born out of those experiences and the contrasts that I saw between public and private education. For the Education Committee chair to suggest that being in school is not as important is a ridiculous comment, in my opinion. Education is all about opportunity. It's both quantity and quality for educational opportunities. And West Virginia is failing in this instance to send the right message by considering an hourly requirement, the lowest in the country, versus a daily requirement. And in my opinion, they won't do the hard work of coming up with the requisite amount of money to pay these teachers, to get quality teachers in the classroom. They're going to throw them a bone and say, if we can't pay you, we're going to give you the flexibility so that your schedule may allow you to have more Fridays off. That to me is almost insulting to the parents and consumers of education in West Virginia. So to me, the question that I want to throw out this morning is this hourly proposal from your Senate Education Chair, is this an artful dodge to avoid making the tough choices in education? Or is it an admission that we are never going to spend the kind of money and resources necessary to get our educational problems fixed? That's my question.
Got a text from Paul Espinosa. I helped kill that bill for 12 years. Someone else will have to kill it this year. Mr. Gilstrap, you go first.
Thank you, Paul.
I think there's a delicate balance that needs to be reached. I don't know the motivation behind this bill, and I don't know how 900 hours compares to the 180-day schedule. Apparently, it's less than that. I have a larger concern, and that tangentially addresses what you're talking about, and that is, we have a lot of problems with young people in this country right now between school violence and there's just isolation issues in particular. And I remember when my son was coming up through school, you had with the advanced placement and all this, and this was in Fairfax County, and then the organized sports, kids didn't have time to be kids. And I think that we're paying a price for that, the classic, Mayberry kind of childhood that nobody actually had, but that we all had, in the sense we go and you hang out with friends and you don't do anything. And somehow we got educated in the process. I don't know where things are broken. I can't say that Senator Grady is trying to pull a fast one here. I just don't know that. But there's we put a lot of pressure on kids to achieve, and I think that's good to a degree. But when you say that more education or more time in the classroom, I forget how you phrased it, more time in the classroom is better than less time in the classroom, I'm not sure that's true. I think that we need to have kids are not socially aware anymore. The whole street smart, that's what I'm trying to get to. The street smarts that used to exist seems to be going away. I don't know where the balance is. I'm not an educator. But to design a program specifically to give teachers an extra day off, I don't think that's a good idea.
Mr. Carl.
Well, I'm totally opposed to this movement that we just heard described. West Virginia has a relatively poor public education system, and we need to support increased efforts toward public education in West Virginia, and this is going in the opposite direction. I'm totally opposed to it.
Mr. Stubblefield.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. I'm not really sure I know how to respond to it. I want to first acknowledge Joe can develop an issue that I had looked at, but I'd not looked at it below the surface. Joe, thank you for making it understandable terms of the good and the bad, if you will. I'm impressed with Senator Grady. I'm impressed with some of the bills that she's proposed in the past. The K through third grade having additional aid, I think, is going to be instrumental in improving the educational system. She is a teacher. She's very knowledgeable of what's going on. I do not want to casually throw her intent to the side. I am not a teacher. I do not know the ins and outs and the challenges facing our educational system. I think she probably is in a much better position than I am. On the surface, I agree with Mike Carl that it's not something that I can see merit to. But I am, again, not in a position to judge. I will leave that to Paul Espinosa and some of the others that are much closer to it than I am. But on the surface, it has little merit.
Norwood.
Well, I'll tell you, for one who has had two children in Berkeley County schools and one who went to public school in West Virginia, going from 180 days of instruction to 900 hours of instruction is a bad idea. I'm not sure what Senator Grady's intent is, but it's a bad idea. And for companies who come to West Virginia and look around, one of the things they look at is educational opportunities for their children. They are not going to be impressed by 900 hours, the lowest in the country. This is not going to do West Virginia any benefit at all. It's I think, a terrible idea for children, a terrible idea for parents, a bad idea for education generally, and I'm disappointed that we haven't already heard from the governor of the state in opposition to this, and I'm disappointed that we haven't had above the chairmanship of the Senate Education Committee some leadership that has put a stop to it. It's a bad idea, and unfortunately, as Joe pointed out, it's gaining strength down there in these last few days of the legislative session. So I'm disappointed that it's even being looked at.
Back to you, Joe.
Well, I think that the comments that I referenced from Senators Hart and Oliverio, it's saying the quiet part out loud. And these people came right out of that Education Committee hearing and said this to the press, that if we can't pay the teachers what they're worth, this is perhaps a way to placate them, is essence what they're saying. In other words, we can't do the hard part, so let's do the easy part, and let's mess with the school calendar. And let's give some flexibility out there. A good word, right? Flexibility. To me, this is an admission, and it sends the wrong message to the citizens of West Virginia and the country, that West Virginia is not serious about education. And I think that message is going to be damaging for the state. The educational system in West Virginia is one of the reasons why my girls will not move back to West Virginia. They'll tell you that. They're going to have children someday of their own, and they don't trust the West Virginia educational system that they came up through. And this is just another message out there, a red flag to those who might be consumers of this education, that we're not going to do the hard stuff. We're going to do the easy stuff. And this is coming from a fourth grade teacher, Amy Grady, in the Education Committee. And I find it just very damaging and very disappointing. Look, they just voted yesterday. I think the House voted for a 3% raise for teachers and school personnel, approximately $1,800 more a year in their paychecks. That will still leave West Virginia 50th in teacher pay. So they just will not do the hard work and the heavy lifting. They're going to do this. And I think it's just a terrible situation, and it's a signal to really everybody in West Virginia that we are not taking education seriously. Where's the substantial pay raises that are going to get the teachers in the classroom certified to teach in their subject matter? Remember, we are missing a lot of certified teachers. A lot of teachers in the classroom are not certified to teach the subject matter. We have a shortage of teachers overall. We're losing teachers to our neighboring jurisdictions. This is a problem that won't be solved by going from 180 days to 900 hours. And if you do the math, 900 hours is 5 hours a day. 5 hours times 180 days is 900 hours. That's the calculation that's taking place here, and it's a calculation that's going to cost our kids.
Well, Joe, my point in interviewing Amy Grady on that I got from her was that, listen, teachers are burned out in West Virginia. They have to work hours that are not paid or compensated when they go home at night in regards to grading papers, dealing with student issues, and what have you. And they are rewarded for this by being the lowest paid teachers in the country. So thinking outside the box, how do we retain teachers in West Virginia This seems to be her thought on the process, which is, let's give them more quality time to be good teachers. Perhaps it brings up morale. Perhaps it makes a more productive teacher who's able to teach better, perhaps in a shorter period of time, teach more efficiently. If we can't compensate these folks, let's find another way to keep them, and maybe this is that way to keep them.
If you can read a list, we already know that West Virginia does not prioritize public education. I mean, you can't hover around 49 and 50 for year after year after year and hold your head up and think that you do. But I wonder, I mean, the unspoken part here, I think it's Lewis County that has where 55% of all minor children are in foster care. 55%. The issues of education in West Virginia, I don't think are tied. I'm not suggesting a teacher shouldn't be paid more, but that's not where the issue is. And it's not the number of instructional hours that are available. It's 180-hour delta, which is far too much. I don't support that at all. But the issues with the education system aren't with teachers. I could argue that we spend a lot of money that we shouldn't spend on administration, but the issues are much deeper than that.
All right, Joe, good start to the program. If you have a final 10 seconds of thought, Joe, now's the time to air it.
Yeah, Rob, my response to Amy Grady would be that that's a teacher complaint across the country. But in some states, they get paid for their hard work. West Virginia, they're not.
And on that note, we take our break for the top of the hour. Admiral, you are on the clock, along with Mr. Gilstrap in the next segment. This is Talk Radio, WRNR Martinsburg and TV10.
Joe, I have to apologize to you. I've already apologized to my colleagues around the table. I'm going to change the issues on you. So the ones that I sent out last night, forget about it. It's a different issue altogether. A couple so years ago, with the leadership of Eric Householder, there was a reduction in personal income tax in West Virginia, and they established some triggers that would allow further reduction of personal income tax. In his State of the State address, the governor took this one step farther and said, we're not going to wait for the triggers. We're going to have a 5% that I will find money for, and then another 5%, which the legislators will find money for, will make a 10% tax reduction income tax, and I think it's done strictly for political purposes. Well, the Senate, in their deliberation, picked up the challenge of the governor, and they came up with a 10% tax reduction. And I would argue that was in the face of a lot of the needs we have in the state, needs that we continually talk about, child care, the ballooning cost of Hope Scholarship, pay raises for our teachers, which there's 3% already included, Medicare costs, PIA, and a litany of other things. But anyway, the 10% tax cut that, as suggested by the Senate, I think probably challenges funding some of these other programs. Well, the House took a different stance. The House says we're not going to go along with the 10% suggested by the Senate without deliberation, without quite a bit of deliberation. And they were, in effect, they were saying, Governor, we're not going to necessarily play your game. We're going to look at this and see if we have enough money for it. And they mentioned other needs that the state has. And Vernon Criss, who's chairman of the Finance Committee in the House, I think made a very telling statement in his summation. He said, in the long term, we're interested in making sure that we're here for the long haul. The governor is not. I think that sums up very quickly the different position of the governor and I'm going to say the governor and the Senate and the House, which is taking a hard look. Can the state afford a reduction of 10% or even 5% in the personal income tax? That's my changed issue, Joe. My apologies for not giving you advance warning.
All right, that's the issue. Let's go to Joe. Since you referenced Joe, let's get him on the phone and have you do the first reply, Joe.
Well, no problemo there, Bill. This, I think, is worthy of discussion. I thank you for raising it. Look, I recall Delegate Householder and Senator Craig Blair coming on this show and extolling the virtues of having a system in place that serves as a trigger so that if there is economic performance by the state, then we will be permitted to proceed with further tax cuts. It made sense at the time. Everybody was singing hosannas about it. But now here we are 2 short years later, and we're already attempting to deviate it. And the only thing that's changed is the man sitting in the governor's mansion, because he wants 10%. And by gosh, even his bill, his proposed budget only included 5%. He threw it to the legislature to find the other 5%. And Bill, you were right in citing what Vernon Chris had to say, because he also said that if we have triggers based on economic performance for these tax cuts, show me the performance and then we'll cut taxes. Well, nobody is showing the performance. So I think this is a bad idea on the Senate's part to try to cut taxes further. I guess we can get into that with Senator Barrett at some point, but I think the House approach is the better approach. Not only are they going to fund the Hope Scholarship and all those other base building expenses that we have, but they're funding Medicaid out of general revenue instead of out of the surplus money that the governor wanted to do. And I think those are more important issues for West Virginia presently. Stick to the plan.
Let's go to the former tax commissioner of the state of West Virginia, Michael Carl.
Well, let me point out that there's two important aspects to tax levels. One is if the tax level is reduced, does that stimulate more business and therefore replace the lost, the officially lost tax revenue with new tax revenue? And the other aspect is if you reduce the revenue in the short term, the spending, what effect do the spending cuts do that are necessary from initially reduced revenue to the government functions and how they relate to the stimulation of the private economy and therefore the tax base. So those are two real important and closely related aspects that have to be considered when you talk about these things. And I agree that the current governor's just trying to send a politically favorable message about further tax cuts.
So you would think at this point the House has the better budget plan than the Senate and the governor?
Yeah, I do.
Mr. Bentley.
Well, I find myself in agreement with Mr. Carl today and Joe Ferretti. The fact of the matter is that we had this trigger plan that came up in 2023, I believe, that we spent a lot of time on. The leadership we had at the time said, everybody likes tax cuts, and we do. I love tax cuts. But let's do it in a way that makes sense for our pocketbook in West Virginia, which has never been overflowing with abundance. Let's do it when we can afford to do it. And let's do it at a triggered time when it makes sense. The Senate version of the bill this year, the budget bill, which includes the 10% tax cut that the governor wants, is wild. It leaves it up to the legislature to find another $250 million in cuts to a budget that's already draconian in many ways. The budget that the House has come up with is sensible, reasonable, it says to the governor, your plan is not a real plan. It's not a real agenda. It makes no financial, responsibly financial sense, and we're going to do it this way. We're going to use the system that's in place, and thereby we're going to fund things that need to be funded, that are already in the budget. And we're going to take care of those things in a reasonable manner. It makes sense to follow the House this year and not the Senate. And with apologies to our own Senator Barrett, he's wrong this time. He's following the political winds, and he ought to be looking at the House and what they're doing.
Mr. Gilstrap.
I think I've told this story on here before. When in the late 80s, when I was in the rocket motor business, explosives business, I was given an opportunity to transfer, actually it was a mandate, to transfer to East Camden, Arkansas, because that's where our production facilities were going. And the salary I was making in Northern Virginia, in East Camden, Arkansas, would have made me a king. But the education sucked. There's no social infrastructure there. It was everything about the area just did not apply to me, and the company I work for lost dozens of engineers, including me, because we're not going to go to a place that is so it's just not a good place to raise a family unless you want to teach them to hunt and fish, and then it's lovely. We're now in a situation here in in West Virginia. We just talked about it with the education system. Our current tax rate, maximum tax rate, is 4.8%. In Virginia, it's 5.75. In Maryland, it's 6.5. So a 10% reduction off of 4.8%, I don't know what that calculation comes out to be. It's just not that much for each individual household. I'll stipulate that money in my pocket is better than money in the government's pocket. But we have stuff that we need to pay for. We've got a poverty issue here. We have a truancy issue here. We have a dependency issue here. We have problems with foster children and orphans and not orphans for social reasons. To go and just randomly decide, okay, we're going to cut another $250 million. Okay, if that's what we want to do, but understand if our goal is to attract businesses, the delta between Maryland and Northern Virginia that have outstanding school systems to move for an extra 1.5 in income tax changes, I think it's a fool's errand. I just don't think it's going to work.
Mr. Stubblefield, back to you.
Yeah, Mike Carl made a point, and John picked up on it, and that was a justification for tax cut would be attracting businesses to make up for the deficit of the tax reduction. Well, when the governor ran for office, he frequently invoked the fact we're going to have a backyard brawl with all the neighboring states. He was going to box their ears when it comes to recruiting for new businesses. Well, maybe it's a little premature, but in the last year, we've not seen the results of that claim. We've seen our neighboring states, Ohio, Tennessee, Kentucky, get new businesses, big mega businesses. We have not. We've been on the hind end of that line. Except for the data centers, we've not seen any new businesses coming in. And data centers are coming in everywhere. So I think there's, Mike's point was very well made. You can justify these tax cuts only with the expectation, strong expectation of new businesses coming in. We've seen no evidence of that.
Issue number 3, Mr. Gilstrap.
Well, that was a nice segue. I want to talk about the push for data centers here in West Virginia. There is a veil of secrecy that goes over the data center construction that disturbs me greatly. And I get, if you want to buy up a bunch of property, you don't necessarily want to tell everybody that you're coming in. The Wall Street Journal had an article on February 19th that talked about the spike in real estate prices that happens when data centers come in. And what's happening is that home builders are being pushed out. That the one homeowner, I can't find the article, Stanley Martin, bought property to build homes for $50 million. And then a year later, he was offered $700 million to build the data centers. There's property in Texas that was selling for $30,000 and $40,000 an acre 2 years ago, and now it's going for $350,000 an acre. We talk about housing problems in America, and this isn't really directly tied to that, but we have to understand that the data centers, that they're not polluters in the traditional sense of polluting. They don't poison the water. There's not a lot of hazardous chemicals, but they drink a lot of water, and there's a noise issue that goes with it. That's the common thread that I hear, is that there's this constant hum that doesn't go away. But we've been told that this is a fine thing. We're going to put up with this because of all of the tax revenue that's coming in. Well, the Mountain State Spotlight had an article last week that talks about there's a bill going through West Virginia that gives tax incentives to bring in the data centers, and that the tax incentives they're doing, and I can't speak to the details of this, I'm just taking it at face value of what I read. The tax incentives are such that the tax revenue is going to be deferred from the state for 10 years. So and we're not allowed to know where they're going. And according to the one bill that went through, we can't stop them. No government entity can stop them from building wherever the hell they want to build these things. My question to the panel is, are we playing with Pandora's box here? And are we being drawn in to a commitment to make West Virginia ugly and to run out to run out the population that we want to bring in here, because all of a sudden property values are going to be very, very high while services don't get any better?
All right. Back to the telephone with Joe Ferretti. Joe?
New York Times has been covering this pretty extensively regarding local responses to the building of data centers. And they cite to St. Joseph County in Indiana as a prime example of what's currently happening on the ground. And if you study that situation, you will know that the West Virginia legislature is operating under two ill-conceived notions about these data centers. Number one, that they can be built anywhere. Not true. You got to have available land, you got to have available power, you got to have water, and you got to have a delivery network so that the output from these data centers can be delivered to the citizens of the country. So they can't be built everywhere. Number two, local input has no place. That's another ill-conceived notion of this legislature. Local input does have a stake and a place in this debate. And what's happening now on the ground is that these owners of these data centers who are proposing to build these things, and they're monstrosities. I mean, we're talking about one that's 1,000 acres in size out in Indiana. Now what you see when places like St. Joseph County in Indiana rejected a data center in their county because their locals had input, now these companies are coming forward and offering incentives. They're saying, you know what, we don't want to be part of a pilot program. We'll pay our taxes immediately. And you know what, we'll make commitments to you regarding how much water we use and how much land we put under construction. They're doing that because of local input. So the legislature, which is setting aside those two criteria for these data centers, I think is making a grave mistake for the citizens of West Virginia.
Mike Carl.
Well, I have to give this qualified response. My now former law firm and I personally, as a practicing lawyer, were very involved in the legislation that enabled the data center projects. So I have to say that all criticism of that legislation and its goals is dead wrong. Sorry.
Mr. Bentley, you were part of that same law firm at one time?
Well, it was a long time ago, and I feel fine in criticizing the legislation.
For what reasons?
It is the legislation that is proposed in West Virginia and is moving fine. The rules hide from West Virginians the ability to know the acreage, the locations, the water usage, the power usage, the noise, anything at all. It all goes to the department. Those things are considered confidential under the law, under the rule, and go to the Department of Commerce. The local governments have no say-so at all. It's all confidential. Everything. It's all hidden from local governments. So it's sprung on, pardon me, sprung on people. And the size of these things can be so great as to ruin, for instance, in Tucker County, where we have ski resorts. One springs up right next to possibly a ski resort. In Berkeley County, one springs up, and we don't know what the water usage is going to be, and we all know what water problems we can have in this county.
30 seconds. I got to get to Bill. Wrap it up.
So it's hiding things that should not be hidden from the public.
Mr. Stubblefield.
Yeah, I agreed with Mike Carl earlier. I disagree with him now.
It was a good run.
Yeah, it was a good run. It lasted for about 5 minutes. But when you said it, the people that are criticizing are dead wrong. What happened to our right in this country to criticize if there's good logic? Our government is based upon the premise of legislation by the people, for the people. For the people of what's in question here. Our local legislators, local county officials have tried to raise objection. Kara Keys, Jefferson County, I think, has been very effective in raising objection. She's received a kind of a blind eye. County commissioners in Berkeley County have basically been told, you either shut up or get out of here. That's not legitimate protesting. I'm concerned on several fronts, and the lack of transparency is the biggest one. John Gilstrap mentioned some of these. There's another one, though, is how much it's going to cost us as locals. If there's a micro generator involved, that's a contained cost. We can probably see what the cost is going to be. Where it's coming from the pole, such as what we have in Berkeley County, the question has been asked, no one's been able to give an answer. How much is it going to cost me as a ratepayer of supplementing a data center which uses a lot of power from the pole? There's no way that's going to happen without me paying for some of it. And yet that answer is not available. That answer has not been avoided. So, Mike, I disagree with you. We have every right to protest.
Strong argument, Bill. John, back to you to close it up.
Republicans make such a big deal about home rule. We should be able to set our own destiny here as West Virginians. And then time after time after time, they just walk all over their own argument. It's not about whether or not the absolute value of data centers might be great. If it's so, then they should share that, and they should be open about it and give us all the details that we want to have. When you have this cloak of secrecy, that's never a good ththing. It's just, in West Virginia in particular, has a history of being abused by corporate presence in destroying communities. And so I think this is a real problem. John's beginning to see the light. Very good, John.
Joe, I heard your voice for a second. Do you have a quick thought?
I'm just going to say that's strong. Love it.
All right. Brought it at the end there, no doubt. We come back. Mr. Norwood Bentley's on the clock along with Mr. Michael Carl.
West Virginia House Bill 4600 requires all ballots in primary and general elections be received by county clerks no later than 8 p.m. on Election Day if they are to be counted. Current law permits votes received up until the time of official counting if postmarked by Election Day. What problem is this bill meant to fix?
What problem is this bill meant to fix, or as Mr. Gilstrap so often would say, what itch is this scratching? Mr. John, you get to go first then.
Well, I don't pretend to know the what's behind it. I think the longer with all the election stuff that's been going on, whether it's real or it's unreal, the drumbeat is that there's a election issues going on in America. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but if the rumor's strong enough, the truth doesn't matter. The longer an election cycle goes on, the more opportunity there is for cheating and finagling. The only reason that states have allowed mail-in balloting, I think, is to tilt the vote in favor of the party in power when that was passed. Everybody acts in their own best interest. Personally, if I were elected king, you have to show up at the voting place at the voting time, or if you're in the military, have some kind of a certified mail-in ballot. But I think that voting shouldn't be too easy. I think that it's a duty. I think it's an overt act that people should commit to go out if they care enough to get off their sofa and then go to a polling place and then vote. That's how democracy works. I think once you drag the process out, we end up with decision making among the public that's not well thought out, and I think it opens up opportunity for cheating. I don't know if that is the motivation behind this particular bill, but it doesn't bother me that we have this bill.
Mr. Stubblefield.
I was afraid you were going to call to me on
All right,
Rob.
Mr. Ferretti.
I was doing some research.
All right, I'll go to Joe first if you want me to.
Yeah,
All right,
please.
Joe, go right ahead.
Currently, 14 states in the country allow mail-in ballots to be counted after Election Day. Most of those states set a time limit, 3 to 5 days after Election Day, but typically before what they do, which is called a canvass, where they go and they certify the election results. They will add those mail-in ballots that came in after Election Day, certify them as proper ballots, and include them in the count. 14 states do that presently. West Virginia is one of them, but of course this proposed change is going to fix all that, apparently. But I'm struck by John's statement that rumor is strong enough that facts don't matter. Wow. And that probably is at the heart of this debate regarding election integrity, because there are certain states in this country, Oregon being one, that do all mail-in ballots. That's how they vote. And it has been proven to be safe, secure, and accurate. So President Trump started this drumbeat with his executive order last fall that all mail-in ballots have to be counted by Election Day. Of course, that did not have the force and effect of law. So that's why state legislatures now are jumping on the Trump bandwagon and trying to change things, which is what West Virginia is doing. The bottom line is there's a Supreme Court case on point on this very issue, Watson versus the RNC, because no surprise, the RNC is behind this initiative to restrict the counting of mail-in ballots. And the Supreme Court has scheduled oral argument for March 23rd. So we're soon going to find out in the battle over states versus federal power, we're going to find out who wins.
Go ahead, John.
I just want to clarify the point about when the rumor is strong enough, the facts don't matter. When it comes to politics, I mean, that's what faith is all about. Faith is all about trusting the system. And rumors, if they get enough momentum, they affect the faith in the process. There are whole political campaigns, West Virginia senatorial campaigns that I can think of that are driven largely by false claims that influence the electorate, and then it doesn't matter because it did what it had to do. That's the way politics works, unfortunately. So I think we have to get ahead of rumors and kind of shut off the valve that allows them to exist.
Well, I would agree, but to use your analogy, I think it's incumbent upon people to get off the couch and learn the facts and determine whether or not the remedy is a cure that's needed.
Mr. Carl.
Well, as is the case on virtually every issue, I very much agree with Mr. Gilstrap.
I'm going to start making you go before Gilstrap all the time.
but any game, flexibility or game playing and adjustments with election management is a beginning of corruption and wrong election outcomes, and so I'm against adding these options for longer counting.
Mr.
Well, this
Stubblefield.
is not an option to add longer counting.
It's shutting it down.
This is shutting down what has existed in West Virginia since 1863. We have been allowed to cast our ballots up until the canvass starts, the canvass of the voting starts. So I think you just misspoke.
Well, yeah, I believe in tight management and accounting of voting ballots.
Mr. Stubblefield?
I'm of two minds on this. One, I have no heartburn at all if you want to move up the final date of submission. That can be done mechanically, and I don't care traditional-wise if it's ever done from the history of our state or not. To me, that's not the big issue. The big issue is there, in fact, voter fraud is it real or is it perception? John Gilstrap argues that perception means a lot, and I agree with John on this. There have been a couple of studies. One in Pennsylvania over the last 30 years showed over $100 million votes cast. There are 39 cases of voter fraud. In Arizona, there's less than 0.001% of voter fraud. The Heritage Foundation, which is well known for its conservative output, says they have found no evidence, or at least minuscule evidence, of voter fraud. So there is a lot of arm waving. There's a lot of criticism, got voter fraud everywhere, but the statistics, the numbers do not demonstrate this.
Norwood, back to you to wrap it up.
Well, there were 60 cases before the courts in the 2020 election where President Trump yelled and screamed that there was large voter fraud. None of them were found to be true. There was not substantial voter fraud in any of those cases. So I think there is no problem to be fixed. It's a bill that's looking for something to do.
Joe, what's the latest with your ballots in Fulton County, Georgia there?
Well, we don't know what the federal government is doing with those ballots, but what is happening now is that, remember that the election laws changed in 2021 in Georgia, which is why I think in a crazy way, we lost the Major League Baseball All-Star game as a protest over the changes in election law in Georgia in 2021. The election committee now in Fulton County has been, shall we say, rearranged to the point where there's some Trump supporters on there. And now they're going to be looking very closely at, believe it or not, two things. Number one, they're going to require the state to monitor what's going on in Fulton County, which happens already under the Secretary of State. But secondly, they're going to there's a motion right now pending, which is under review, that they may have asked the federal agents and officials, including ICE, to monitor the ballot boxes in Fulton County. If that happens, there's going to be a major problem, and you can bet court action as a result.
All right, it's your number 5, Michael Carl.
Let's go national full-time. By opposing tighter voter ID requirements, are the Democrats trying to gain a political benefit for their foreign immigration enforcement?
All right. Norwood, I'm going to go to you first on this one.
Thank you very much. No, Democrats are not trying to gain a political benefit for any foreign immigration failures by opposing voter ID requirements, by opposing.
Proposing, I said.
No, you said opposing in your.
Restate your opening.
But if you if you mean to say proposing voter ID requirements,
yeah, that's what I mean.
No, we're not.
All right, good answer.
I think we've had a pretty good discussion on what I think we're doing with voter ID requirements.
Mr. Gilstrap.
I don't understand. I'm delighted that the Democrats are fighting voter ID. This is an 80-20 issue, or even maybe a 90-10 issue. Americans are united in the fact that you should be American to vote. You should be able to show your ID. I don't understand, having always lived in an area where I have to show ID to vote. They ask for the ID, they write it down, you go and you vote. I don't understand the rationale behind not doing it. So, that being the case, when the Democrats vote in a block to block the 80-20 issue, it has to be somehow perceived to be in their best interest to do so. Whether it's to protect illegal voting or illegal voter voting, I don't know. It's the presence of ICE at polls shouldn't have an intimidating effect if everybody at the polls is in fact able to be an American citizen and able to vote. So there's a lot of conflicting messages that are going on, but everybody acts in their own best interest. So the fact that the Democrats are blocking this as a block means that somehow they perceive it to be their best interest, when I really think it's not.
Bill, you look like you're ready to jump out of your chair.
Yeah, I was. John's been encouraged me all day that he's coming up viewing things the right way, except the last statement you made, that we can have ICE folks around the voting booth and it shouldn't bother anybody. That is a police state in the purest sense of the word. That is
their immigration.
That's frightens people. That intimidates people. That is a level of order above what we've been talking about. Anything else? I'm sorry, John. You got me all excited on that. And I will question your number. You said 80-20. It's closer to 86-14. 86% of the folks view there should be some sort of voter ID. I do not know why the Democrats and bloc or the legislators are against it. What scares me is that because of the pushback against Trump, the Democrats have a reasonable chance of in the next election, unless they blow it by being overly progressive, overly left-wing, and this is an example of what could happen to them. So I'd like to see that block of Democrats, folks voting against it, to dissolve and allow this to go through.
Joe.
Well, Mike Carl raises the argument that's often cited as to why Biden let in so many illegal immigrants, and that is, they're all going to show up and vote Democrat. Well, I think if you look at this logically and factually, that argument doesn't hold water. Logically, if you're here illegally, the last place you want to be is at a voting booth where you may be asked to give ID and swear you are who you are. That's the last place you want to be if you're here illegally. And factually, it's just not happening. As Bill mentioned, the Heritage Foundation has studied voting patterns across this country going back 25 years. And they were only able to find 77 instances of a non-citizen voting across the country. We're talking about hundreds of millions of votes in a 25-year span, 77 instances. So it's not a problem that anything such as voter ID is going to solve, because there's no problem to solve here. Now, the Democrats, to be accurate here, the voting ID issue, that ship has sailed. In fact, as I said last week, in states that have instituted stricter voter ID requirements, voting numbers are actually up. What the SAVE Act, which is pending in Congress, and what the Democrats object to, is the added requirement that you establish your citizenship. And as I stated, that's going to create a lot of problems here for people if we have to go that route and have to produce a birth certificate or a passport. I have yet to hear a rationale and an explanation from Congress as to how mechanically that is going to work across the country. And until there's an adequate explanation there, you can expect the Democrats will continue to object to that SAVE Act.
There was some argument creep there, Joe, when we shifted from specifically to the voter ID over to the false motivation of the Biden administration. The issue is not about them casting votes. The issue is about them populating Democrat areas that give them more seats during the census, and gives them because the illegals are in fact counted in the census, that then, assuming they go to Democrat areas, then that would mean that there would be greater Democratic representation in the House and Senate than there would be otherwise.
But you'd have to show me that they're moving to Democrat.
Oh, I don't know that. I don't know that they are, but I think that's the reason why he opened the floodgates. That, and he had no idea what he was doing.
Mr. Carl, back to you.
I think there is an inherent, obvious coordination between the Democrats' horrible immigration management and law enforcement and their opposition to voter ID enhancement.
We have time for a bonus issue here, Joe, and I'm going to go to one of your topics, which was a Second Amendment rights and the Trump administration point that you were making, Joe. If you want to quickly.
Second?
I think so it was, yeah. When it Second Amendment?
No, it was First
Amendment.
Oh,
First Amendment.
My mistake, misread it. But anyway, go right ahead.
Yeah, I just queried whether or not an administration which ran on the First Amendment freedoms that they felt Biden administration had challenged, whether or not the Trump administration was merely projecting now that they have come into office and are trying to imprison members of Congress for speaking their mind, now that they have sought to arrest people who are protesting and assembling in Minneapolis. It seems to me that the Trump administration has turned this First Amendment argument on its head. And so my query was, do you feel that the rhetoric of the campaign has been lost on the Trump administration in terms of the First Amendment?
Oh, let's do speed round. We got 30 seconds apiece to go around the table, Bill.
You'll have to add 60 minutes. You'll have to add some late night talk shows. You have to talk about TV personalities. The list is endless. The academic community list is unlimited.
Mr. Gilstrap?
This is nothing new. I mean, Barack Obama investigated journalists during his era. We have the Alien Sedition Acts, if you want to really go back. Woodrow Wilson tried to silence people about talking against the government. Every administration, you have Biden. Biden deplatformed Republicans across the board. The IRS during Obama administration started holding back on the tax exemptions for conservative causes. The attacks on First Amendment are perceived by whose ox is being gored. This is nothing new. The difference is that Trump is doing it through rhetoric, and none of this has become law. In the other administrations, there was attempts in some cases to make it law, Alien and Sedition Acts and Wilson in particular. So no, I don't. This is nothing new.
Bentley, Mr. Bentley.
What's new? What's new is this rhetoric is on the airwaves daily and every minute, and it's forcing people to be investigated, forcing them to go to court. It is all new. All new.
Might that be driven by a president who's a little ticked off that he was driven
It's
to
driven
hire...
by a president who has gone off the deep end.
No, there is a lot of... I do think there's a lot of retaliation in this, and I think it's unpresidential. I think it's very human. But it's not new.
It's never been demonstrated in past presidents, this level of retribution.
Oh, I disagree.
It has not.
You don't. No. Barack Obama and his. I know James Rosen. He was the one that was targeted by the Obama administration because they didn't like what he was saying.
Individuals, perhaps, but not to the scale we're seeing now, John.
But
it's across the board.
What does it matter? I mean, if it's one person versus an organization, it's the same thing.
It's a root of our First Amendment, John. A root of our First Amendment that's been violated.
Okay, so what happened when James Rosen was persecuted by the government? Why wasn't that as big a First Amendment violation? He was actually prosecuted. He beat it.
And what about Kelly? What about the other members of Congress?
Not prosecuted.
On that note, ladies and gentlemen, we have to stop to get in our final thoughts. See what you started, Joe? 8 seconds apiece when we get back after this. Final thoughts, 8 seconds apiece. Mr. Ferretti, go.
Yeah, what happens with this Hope Scholarship debate? It's going to be another window into how we handle education in West Virginia.
Mr. Bentley.
Come on. You're taking my time.
Mr. Stubblefield.
Okay, yeah. We made progress today of moving John Gilstrap to the bright side, to the light side, but we did not get over the finish line. We'll try again.
Mr. Carl.
Years had a disappointing loss, but they got a shot still at the NCAA.
Mr. Gilstrap, you have time today.
Four Seasons Books, German Street, Shepherdstown, February 24th at 6 p.m. I'll see you all there.
Dave Ramsey's show is next. This is Talk Radio, WNR Martinsburg and TV 10. Have a great weekend. We'll talk again at 70. Short hour.